episode number 2. We have a very, very special guest. Oh my gosh. Who do we think we have here today? Let's see if we can figure this one out. Oh yeah, ladies and gentlemen, a blast from everybody's past. The one, the only, and my good friend of 35 years. Holy cow. I can't believe we're doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Adam Curry. What's up, Adam?
Vic
What's
Pepe,
up, my man?
Vic Pepe, my brother from way back and way down south. It is so good to see you, man.
How's that intro for you?
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate it. It does. It's not my whole life, but I'll take it.
Of course not.
I embrace that. I embrace the hair. I embrace the Moon Man. I embrace all those years at MTV. You bet.
Well, I was trying to start where we started, right? That's how I met you.
Yeah, true.
And
hold
certainly
on a second,
not.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Are we drinking or what? Because you
Heck yeah,
set
baby.
me up.
Heck yeah, man. Come on.
Okay, hold on.
I got the moon dance
I got my
going
ice.
here.
Hold on, I got my ice.
All right.
And what are you drinking?
I have some number one Blanco tequila.
Yes.
Okay, with some lime in it and a very light bit of cranberry juice for my feminine side.
Well, wow. Okay.
All right.
So I have from one of my producer listeners.
Oh,
this
nice.
Is Derringer Rabbit Hole Derringer straight bourbon whiskey finished in sherry cases.
That's because you have hair on your chest.
That's right. So I
Yeah,
figured
I don't have any hair on my chest,
you,
so I can't drink
you were
going to
drink tequila. I figured I was going to bring. I don't really drink. Well, I drink wine, as you know, but I don't really drink the hard stuff. But here's to you, my
salute.
brother.
Ching.
Ching, ching.
Love you, man.
Right. Here we
All
go.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know,
Okay.
I played the intro music because that's where we met. But before we get started, man, your story's unbelievable. It's a great one. The more people I talk to, nobody has one story. Everybody's got a million stories, and it's,
course,
they thread them. So let's go back to, let's let everybody know who you are. Let's go back to a young Adam Curry doing pirate radio. I mean, take us all back to how this whole thing started.
Well, then we'd start when I was about 6 years old. My grandmother, I was living in Maryland, in Kensington, Maryland. My grandmother had given me it was a Sony transistor radio about this big in a handsome leatherette carrying case with a 9-volt battery, AM, and I loved it. I would listen to the local basketball games. As you know, I'm not a sports ball guy, but I'd listen to the local basketball games under my pillow at night, and I just loved hearing the squeak of the sneakers on the court. I loved the guys calling the game. You could hear the backboard, the rim. I loved that whole kind of theater of the mind. So
Question.
I was always.
Was it a brown leather case?
No, black. It was black. Yeah.
All right. I had a different one, but I still have the radio, as a matter of fact.
It had a great sound. It was really good. In fact, my parents would sometimes have to come in at at 11 p.m. or midnight, and somehow the volume had gone all the way up, was blasting away, and I'd just be sleeping to it. So then my parents moved our family to the Netherlands, to Holland, which was kind of a sudden thing. Was job related, and it was weird because in 2 weeks, guess where we're going? Where are we going? We're going to Holland. What? Where's that? Well, they wear wooden shoes there. Okay, this sounds like a bad deal. I'm not liking any of this at all. So we get there, and I'm in the international school, and for Christmas, one of those Christmases, my parents give me a Radio Shack 101 project kit, and this is are you familiar with this thing?
Oh, yeah, I had Heath kits. I had the Radio Shack project kits.
Hold on a second.
All right.
I happen to still have it, Vic.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Was it realistic?
It's from Radio Shack.
Yeah. So, remember Radio Shack's brand was called Realistic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is it.
Look at that.
And it has all these. So I'll show you the box here. So it had all these components in it, and you connect it with wires, and it comes with this huge manual. Look at these two dudes.
What? Yeah. What did you make? What did you make? What did that do?
So you have this big book in it, and you can make a radio receiver and make a thing where, photoelectric eye, where you cover it and then the light would go on. It had relays and one transistor and all these cool things. And had in the back, like page 98, FM radio transmitter.
Sweet.
Okay. So I hook it all up, connect the blue wires, the red wires, the white wires, the yellow wires, and it works. And so now I start to learn about antenna technology, what a half wave is, a full wave, how, a dipole, how you put stuff on the roof. So I'm already climbing on the roof. I'm putting stuff up, and I need to test it. So I get a record player. You heard me right, record player.
Yeah.
And I put the record on. I think it was something, might have been Blue Moves by Elton John, something my dad had. And I put that on, and then my mom drives me around the block, see how far the signal reaches. And I come back, and there's a couple of kids there. And now I'm like 13, 14. And they're like, dude, we hear your signal. This is so cool.
You're done.
So, of course, I had to get another record player, build a mixer. And I started, doing like a broadcast. And I got a microphone. And I practiced for hours. Because, the first time you hear your voice, it's like, whoa, I sound like a girl. This is no good. I got to get it down, man. I got to do something with that voice. Got to get my pipes. And I'd be listening to Wolfman Jack on AFM from Luxembourg. Yeah. And so, I was like, I want to do something with this. There was there was an ad in the paper for looking for hosts and engineers for a hospital radio station about 30 minutes down the road, and it's closed circuit, so it's just for the patients. And you had to be 16. I was 15. My parents said, "Yeah, you can go ahead, fudge. Go, just tell them you're 16." So I apply. I don't get hired as a host, but I get hired as an engineer, which gave me a key and full-time access to a professional studio. So besides doing the stuff for the hospital shows, I was in there every day after school. I'm practicing my voice. I'm getting, figuring out how to cue up records. And I meet this guy, Jeroen van Inkel, and he says, "Hey, man, you should come by our radio station. We got this pirate radio station in Amsterdam." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds cool." And so I go to see them one Saturday night. Now I'm 16, so I have a moped. I can drive it, on Saturday night into Amsterdam. And they say, "Hey, you want to do a shift?" I'm like, "I don't know, man." And said, I spoke Dutch fluently, but said, "Why don't you do it in English? This will be fun."
How long did that take, by the way? How long did it take you to learn to speak Dutch?
Well, the first couple of years we were in the international school. Then my dad changed jobs, and he left the job that he was with, so the international school went away. It was 5th grade. Yep. And my parents on the we had a week off from school. My parents on the Sunday night said, "Guess what you're doing tomorrow?"
You're in the Dutch school.
Whenever they say that, I'm always suspicious now, because last time I went to Wooden Shoe Land and said, "You're going to Dutch school?" "What?" And I spoke, maybe 5 words of Dutch. I mean, we had some Dutch lessons. So that was kind of shocking, but I entered Dutch school in 5th grade, and you learn real quick. You learn real quick. So, I was okay. I had an accent probably, but they just thought, "Dude, why don't you just do it in English? That's cool. You got an American accent, and this is awesome." So I did. Now, of course, it was a pirate station, and it blanketed all of Amsterdam, and they played import records. So they had a deal with some record shop that would get records from, it's like Chicago Warehouse. This is all, early kind of 80s dance stuff. And of course, I couldn't use my real name of being a pirate station. So I came up with this John Holden as a persona. And people right away thought I was black, which was hilarious.
John Holden?
John Holden, yeah, which was
I never knew this. This is fantastic.
Well, yeah, it was. John Holmes was of course our idol back in the day. So it was John Holmes. I figured I'd bastardize. So John Holden is what it became.
Of course.
You didn't know this story?
I didn't know.
I think this is a classic. John Holden. And so, for whatever reason, I sounded black to people, and they're like, "Hey, man, you're cool. It's good to have a black American." I'm like, "What?" And so I just played it up. "Yeah, I'm 24. I got a Harley. I'll meet you ladies later behind the American Hotel." And I was on my moped at 17, and so I honed my chops. It was really great. Then, of course, being from the family I'm from, you got to go to college, son. So, okay. So, I chose a school that would let me on the air as a freshman, and that was Salem College in Salem, West Virginia. And I went there for exactly 3 months. I was running the station within 6 weeks, and I'm like, this is no good. People are here smoking dope, drinking. I'm like, I'm from Amsterdam. This is old news for me. I'm not interested in this. So I dropped out. And I went back, and my parents said, well, then this was a real issue. In dropping out was not done in my family. And they said, well, either you're back in school within a month, or you have a job, you're paying rent, or you're out. And so I just started sending letters, and I sent it to this official radio television station. And the guy called me, and he said, yeah, I want to meet you. And I had a meeting, and he said, yeah, this is great. And this is like Tuesday. Is on Sunday, you're going to be live on the air across the whole country doing a music television show. The host we have for it is leaving, so you're going to be the guy, and it's live. I'm like, what? So that's kind of how it started.
That's MTV?
No, that was the program called Countdown in the Netherlands. Now, Holland was the gateway to Europe at the time. It's still the gateway to Europe, but now just for drugs. But then it was, you wanted to launch a record, you came through Holland because everyone spoke English. Our show was not just in the Netherlands at the time, 14 million people, but we had satellite all over Europe, the European broadcasting system. So everybody came through. I interviewed Tina Turner, David Bowie, the Rolling Stones. You name it, they came through my show.
How old were you then?
19 is when I started.
Let me take you back 1 second because I wanted to drop this in. First of all, this happened because of my brother Steve is how I met you.
Yes.
But this ties back to Steve and to your Radio Shack kit. My father was he was a great engineer and unto himself. He could take anything apart without a manual, put it all back together, fix stuff. My father he figured stuff out on his own. He was amazing. He was taking televisions apart before, anybody.
Now I see where Steve gets it from.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And the joke was that if somebody bought new electronics, my father would show up with a screwdriver because he was going to take the back off and see what was going on.
Make it better.
Yeah. So there was a company back in the same time Radio Shack was coming along called Lafayette. I don't know if you recall Lafayette, right?
Of course.
And Lafayette had similar kits.
Yep.
We won the science fair no matter what happened at school because my dad would build something with us.
Build the project.
Yeah, and we'd build a crazy project. So one year my brother buys the kit for a radio that does, I think it did UHF, FM, did some
shortwave,
did a lot of shortwave, right?
Yeah.
And so they build this radio. And I know they're testing it out. Okay. And I'm 5 years younger than my brother. We grew up in New York and we're there. So I know they've got the radio sitting on the ledge at the window and they're seeing what they can get in. And man, dude, they're getting stuff from all over the place. It was unbelievable. Well, I happened to be outside playing with my friends. And of course, what did I have on my hip? Walkie-talkies were huge back then. And I had my Star Trek branded walkie-talkies. Now, normally when you grow up in New York, when the ice cream man comes down the street, you yell upstairs, "Mom, I need money for ice cream." I mean, just like the Eddie Murphy comedy
routine. You just hit the walkie.
Dude, I hit the walkie in hopes that they would be tuned in. And all of a sudden they hear upstairs, "Mom, if you can hear me, I need money for ice cream. Throw down 35 cents.
Ice cream man! Ice cream man!"
That window opened and the arm reached out and I was like, yeah, they heard me over the radio. I couldn't believe it. But, the kid, I'm familiar with the kits is my point. I didn't build that. My dad and my brother did. But those kits were amazing. Mm-hmm. They were absolutely amazing. It's like a gateway drug to geekdom.
I mean, I'm so still into radio. I have my ham radio license. I have a rig set up. I got an antenna set up. Now it's all digital modes. I love that stuff. Radio is still just a phenomenal. It's physics, it's science, it's nature. It's just so beautiful. Cool. I love it.
I'm going to bring you back. You're interviewing all the bigs, Tina Turner, the Rolling Stones. Let's keep moving. Sorry, I cut you, but I had
all the biggies of the 80s.
And I had to reminisce.
But like everybody, and it was actually, it was Sammy Hagar, and he was there with Van Halen. Van Halen, of course, two Dutch boys, Eddie and Alex. And now this was obviously without David Lee, who I interviewed much earlier when he had gone solo. And Sammy says, "Hey man, you should be this." And this now we're talking now. It's 84, I guess 85. He says, "Man, you should be in America. You should be at MTV." And I'd heard of MTV, of course. And I'm like, really? He says, yeah. You should talk to those guys. So I'm not exactly sure how it happened, and I don't know if he had something to do with it, but I get a call in '86 at my desk, literally. Hey, it's Steve Leeds from MTV. Do you want to come and work for us? I'm like, well, because MTV Europe had just started to launch. I'm like, where? In Europe? She said, no, New York. I'm like, New York? She said, yeah, give me 6 months. I'll be there. And, so we figure out a deal. We work all that out, and I get on the plane. I'm gone. And land in Manhattan, which was mind-blowing. 87 in Manhattan was, you think it's bad now? It was worse. This was before Giuliani and Bratton came in and cleaned it all up. And I lived on 56 and Broadway, which is Hell's Kitchen for a reason. And it was just exciting, crazy. The studios, and it was the studio. I was used to government, 12 camera, 3 makeup rooms, everything. And I learned every single position on television. I know how every single thing works because I'm a radio guy. I can do it all myself, but I learned how everybody's stuff worked because then we had a director and a producer, but I could go into the audio guy and say, hey man, we need a little bit of room noise on because it's all lip sync on the playback over here. And, that I could, because at that time you couldn't just, I'd talk up the clips, they'd start the clip and I'd talk up the intro, but it had a 12-second pre-start. We're talking reel to reel videotape. So I go way back. So I talked to that guy and I said, I'll put my finger up like this. I'll move my head and then you hit the start and I'll have enough room to fill the intro. So I knew all these, and the lighting, I knew it all. And MTV was down by the river and it was in Unitel Video. It was crap. They literally had like 3 lights, 2 cameras. Sally Jesse Raphael show was in the same building and with the same. You
remind me of Chris Farley in a van down by the river.
That's exactly what it was, down by the river in a van. That was MTV. And I was like, wow, this is pretty low rent, but it was cool. It was kind of guerrilla television, and MTV had just gone onto basic cable, which is a big deal. So now we are in 40 million households, which meant a couple of things. One, big deal, you're in 40 million households. But 2, you can't say everything you want to. You got to be a little careful. You have your watershed moments after 10 p.m. It could get a little more risque, but in general, no. And we also had the PMRC and Tipper Gore and all those nut jobs running around talking about, like PMR, like backmasking and devil music, etc. Now, of course, I know as a Jesus freak that they were absolutely right, but but it was weird. It was kind of a weird time, but. I loved it, and I would just be there all day, and we do, 12 hours of programming. We never saw the videos. We were just doing the links in between. So they'd send off these tapes up to Long Island in a car service. Mm-hmm. And then up there would be these tape jockeys, and they'd literally be like, put in a video, a VJ segment, then start the clip. Clips over, VJ segment, start the next clip, all the different machines. So they ran it kind of like a radio station.
Sweet.
And that just, that went on for 7 years, but somewhere in the mix there, I'd moved to New Jersey, started a family, still have only 1 child, but started with 1. Yeah. And I moved in right like 1 street behind Scott Shannon from Z100 in New York. Yeah. And Scott Shannon was my hero, a legend. I stole all of his stuff because, we'd get tapes, cassettes from Z100. Wow, Scott Shannon. Oh man, This guy, he did the Morning Zoo. He had this great concept. We just loved it. The characters, the sound effects, the jingle drops. So we'd emulate all of his stuff. And I met him at, I think Z100 had some kind of, it might have been a bikini contest, and it was me, Scott Shannon, Boy George, believe it or not.
All 3 of you in a bikini, no less.
Yeah, I swear to God.
Yeah, wow, that must have looked great.
And I say, hey, man, you live in Montclair? He said, yeah. I said, I live over here on Glen Road in Verona. I said, it's right behind you. He said, man, you're neighbors. Hey, man. It was more like this. Hey, man. Oh, yeah, we're neighbor. Hey, man, you got a radio? Yeah, I know you got an air check, man. Come on, Mom. That's how he talked.
Yeah.
And so I gave him an air check. I dropped it off at the house, and he said, "Come on, man, you got to do a shift on. You got to do a show, man." And so he bring me on the morning show, and he bring me in as like entertainment guy, like, you know, I just spout some bull crap, and I just try to be cool. And then he gave me a shift on Saturdays, and that's how I met your brother Steve.
Yeah.
And who I always thought was your younger brother. He's going to kill me for this. I always thought he was your younger brother.
No, he's going to love that. Actually, you know, he loves it. He goes, "Yeah, they think you're older."
Yeah, no,
I said it's just my level of maturity.
No, I just think. By the way, this shot of you, I just wanted to say, and this is it's a compliment. It's not a bad thing. You have a very reminiscent look of a younger Larry Ellison.
It's the partial mock turtleneck.
That's what it must be.
It's the sweater. Yeah.
Vic looks like he was my client at one point, so I worked with Larry.
I committed to wearing black during these podcasts. I wore a black shirt with a collar on the first episode. I'm sticking with this. And so I want everybody to pay attention to the guitars and what we're talking about.
I see you, brother. I wore my black hoodie. Look, I got my
I love it.
My 3 Nails hoodie. Yeah.
So it's funny. So now you're at Z100.
Right. So I'm at Z100.
But here's the greatest thing about it. So my brother's like, "Hey, guess who's doing a show out of Z100 Studios?" Yeah, it's Adam Curry from MTV. I'm I got to make sure I'm there while he's there. I'm one of the engineers, because when he's working stuff, if anything breaks, I got to fix it, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's cool. So he gets to know you and this and that. And at the time, I'm in the music business. And so my brother being my brother, he's like, "Hey, my brother's in the music business." And he sort of kind of puts us together. And then
No, it's not like that. He kept bugging me. "Hey, man. Hey, you got to come down to South Jersey. You got to come down to South Jersey, man. This is what's happening, man. This cool stuff. My brother's got a studio, stuff going on there. It's all the cool bands. Come on, man." He bugged me a lot.
All right, I'm going to have to call him and give him an extra handshake and a thank you. I didn't know it was a bug a lot.
It was a bug a lot. And because it was like, well, I'm going to go down. I'm going to take my wife, take my kid. I had a Rolls Royce at the time. I had a Silver Shadow too,
in the glove box.
Dynamite. That's right, dynamite car. And it was a good hour and 15, I think.
Yeah, it was
about an hour and 15.
It was a good trip.
Yeah, and we drive down, and I was like, "What have I landed in? What kind of spaceship is this? Is this place?" Tom's River. I'm like, these people are different, and I liked it immediately because everyone was calling each other names that were clearly, visible characteristics.
We'd be canceled today.
Oh man, it's like Chet the Leaning Mule, Ray the Cripple. I'm like, dude, Ray's a cripple. That's pretty cool. Hey, Ray the Cripple. I mean, and we'd just be saying all this, but it was love. It was like brotherly love, and it was so weird. I liked it. And then you be in the studio with Jack Ponte, and there'd be people in and out, and like, oh, there's the Nelson brothers. Oh, there's was it
Doro Pesh, Alice Cooper?
Yeah, was it Tattoo Rodeo? Was that one of yours too?
Who?
Tattoo Rodeo, was that one of yours?
No, they weren't ours.
Who am I thinking of?
Like the Faster Pussycat guys and Babylon AD.
Yes, Babylon AD. Yeah, and you guys were like Mutt Lange on steroids. Like
we were trying
chorus,
to be Mutt Lange.
Listen to this, and we were like, like, wow, that's really hit me. And I'd been in studios, but I was we're really involved in the process. But it wasn't even that. It was hanging out at y'all's houses, and here's Father Frank, and and all of a sudden a Catholic priest walks in, and here's this big thing of spaghetti, and it was the brotherly love that really got me, and I've said to you, that changed me as a man. It really did. It changed me.
It was good times.
In many ways. It was good times, Vic.
We did dumb stuff back then too. I remember one time, it was before caller ID. I mean, we're aging ourselves here.
This is a classic. Yeah,
you remember this one?
You got to be old enough. You got to be old enough to appreciate this one.
So we're at the studio, and one of the famous pranks were to get on line one, dial somebody. While it's ringing, put them on hold real quick, go to line 2, dial somebody, and then bridge the call and mute and wait. So we're doing that. I mean, I won't name names, but we're doing it to pretty prominent people in the music business. Not that you aren't prominent in the music business back in that day, but we do you and my brother. Okay.
Right. And I'm like, hello? He said, hello?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Who's this? Who's this?
Yeah, my brother immediately gets the chip on his shoulder. I don't know. You fucking called me.
I didn't call you. You called me. No, I didn't call you.
Well, the greatest thing was, I don't know if you recall this, but you got onto it first.
I don't remember.
And you went, because you went, Steve? Like somehow you recognize his voice. And he goes, yeah, who's this? And he's like all pissed off. And you go, it's Adam Curry. And he goes, what's going on? And you say, this can only be the work.
I know, yeah. And I think you guys popped in and cracked up. So
we did. I unmuted and we were crying, hugging each other.
This is the kind of humor we had back in the day. Today, you've got trolling on Twitter. You got dank memes. No, back in the day, we would conference call you and laugh about it.
We were dumb and easily entertained.
That was. We had low tech fun.
Totally. Big time low tech fun. So
it was important for me, Vic. It was important for me. And it gave me some. I didn't really have any male energy in my life up until then. So it was good to be, kind of, I call it trolling, but, we'd mess with each other and it was good. It was something that really, really formed me as a man. It was important.
Let me tell you what's good about it. And I realize this as life goes on and later. And I tell my wife this all the time. Honey, there are parts of a man, that will never mature past 12 years old.
I would say we can hit 15 with that, but definitely not further than that.
we could debate 12 or 15 all day long, but the energy's the same. And, and that's just what I go, those are the parts you love the most. Whether you like to know that, whether you believe it or not, there are parts of us. So these stupid jokes and the humor that guys share, but that's the guy energy you're talking about there.
Yes, because I grew up with women around me all the time. I got a daughter, and now I have 2 stepdaughters to add to it. Women. I know women. I know women real well, but dudes was different, and so that it was really important, and it was great, and it was a great time, and I love being around Johnny Bravo. Oh my God, Bronco, Johnny Bronco. I love. I mean, I put him on MTV.
Unbelievable. You took a lot of heat for that, too. You're like, don't worry about it. I got this. I know what I'm doing.
Don't worry about it. We'll put Johnny Bronco.
I'm Johnny
Bronco. We were stupid.
Oh, it was so great.
You couldn't do any of that stuff on MTV these days. You could do any of that.
Oh, it was so great. You had free license to do what you wanted to.
I brought Michael Bolton on because he lived in my building and MTV wouldn't play him. Of course, he was VH1. But he was a cool dude. He was an okay guy. I'm like, come on down to the studio, man. I'll just put you on. And people were like, Michael Bolton. And it turns out he's a really interesting guy. I mean, he's very versatile. He just got kind of pigeonholed. And then another time just be like, Whitesnake's playing at the Garden. I'm going to have Rudy come on. What? Because I just went around everyone. I went around the producers. No, Rudy Sarzo's a cool dude. I'm going to have him on. Oh, Adrian Vandenberg. He's Dutch. I'm going to have him come by. What?
There you go.
Yeah. Just bring him on. I'm just talking. I completely hijacked everything.
Tell me about Headbangers Ball.
Well, that was interesting because people don't get this right, but Kevin Seal was actually hosting Headbangers Ball. It had just started when I got to MTV.
Okay.
Do you remember Kevin Seal?
I don't recall Kevin Seal. Once you took the show over, that's all I remembered.
Last I saw him was like 15 years ago in a FedEx commercial. He was a FedEx driver in a commercial. But he won the contest, the college contest, being an MTV VJ. And this guy it was like he was constantly on mushrooms. And he had very esoteric, long, shaggy dog stories, which sometimes were brilliant and sometimes just completely failed. But there was something about him that was kind of cool. And he didn't know a lot about music. He didn't know anything else. Music and his weird sense of humor. But he was a wrong fit for this show. And so I came in, I had the hair like, Curry, you're doing Headbangers Ball. I'm like, oh, cool. I mean, I know some of the bands. I certainly know that 95% of them are better musicians than anything you're playing. And I'll put on the leather jacket, Headbangers Ball guy, no problem. So I literally put on the leather jacket, get ready for some hard rockin', thrashing metal every Saturday night at midnight. And I just did the show, and it was, they produced it. Yep. But I think the big breakthrough for Headbangers Ball was when we premiered believe it or not, Headbangers Ball, but it was Guns N' Roses live at the Ritz. And we
what
played
an
that.
amazing
And that
show.
was like risque, and everyone was worried about it. Like, oh my God, people will cancel their cable subscriptions. And that just blew everything away. And then subsequently, it just took off. I mean, this was our time, even though I'm not necessarily a metal guy.
Yeah.
But I could always appreciate the music because I'd listen. And there's never a video I played that I didn't know the song. I mean, I made sure I did my homework, and I would listen to stuff like, "Oh, that's good," but I didn't really have the background of Ronnie James Dio. I didn't know all of his stuff, so I did have some catching up to do. And unfortunately, the way MTV was programming stuff, it would be like Dio, Osborne, Bon Jovi. And it was like, it's not really, it doesn't really belong in Headbangers Ball, but I could never get them off of that. So it wasn't my choice, because that's just what the programming department did. Yeah. And I loved it. And I did that for many years. And then one day, Ricky Rackman comes into the studios. Now, this is after I premiered live at the Ritz. He goes into the offices with Axl. Now, Axl, at this point, he's the biggest star in the world.
Yep.
And Ricky has the Cat Club, or part of the Cat Club or whatever, in L.A. And he says, "Oh, look at this." And he does an audition. Of course, immediately I got kicked off because Ricky's got access. He got Axl. And so I got kicked out. I was very sad about that. But, and then
another thing I didn't know. Look at this.
And then he got Headbangers Ball. Now, MTV fired me so many times because I just wouldn't play ball. I mean, they're like, "Cut your hair." I'm like, "No, you're fired." Okay. And they hired me back, and And it was in 1990. I remember because Christina was probably half a year old. And then can't remember which producer it was. Maybe Alex Coletti. I don't remember. It called me and said, "Dude, this time you're really fired. They really don't want you back." And this was a moment in my life where, oh shit, I have a mortgage payment due. I got $1,000 in the bank. I got a baby girl. I mean, I'm like, what am I? I mean, I had some radio stuff I was working on. I'm like, wow, I'm just freaking out.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I'm like, for 5 days, I didn't want to tell my wife. I'm tormenting myself. I'm eating myself up on the inside. And I was like, oh, this is a disaster. Because do I go back to Europe? What am I going to do? And they call and said, well, they found out they couldn't get anyone to do it like you could, so they'll hire you back for 5 times the amount.
Again.
And it was that moment, Victor, that I said, I'm never, ever, ever in my life going to worry about money again. Ever. I don't care how much or how little I have, because at the time I thought the universe will provide. Now I know a little better. But that was the moment when I just said, that's it. I don't care. I'm never going to worry about money, because it wasn't worth it. For, can you add one hour to the day by worrying? This is what Jesus said.
Yeah,
no,
but you can't.
You can't add 1 cubit to your length. You can't change anything. The worrying is useless. So either you get going, you do something, or not. But worrying, I stopped. It's just like, nope, not going to worry. And from that moment on, I've never had to worry about it. It's gone up and down for me, all different directions. I've always had enough to live. And that was probably the most important moment of my life moving forward, that I'll just never forget that.
That's huge. And that's something that people should hear, because as recent as last night, something came up here in the family, and we were getting ready to go to bed. And I looked at my wife and I said, hey, worrying about that tonight or tomorrow or anytime is useless.
Not going to change it.
It's not going to change it. So I'm going to go to bed with a clear head tonight. I'll deal with it in the morning. The morning came and it all turned out fine.
And I never want to have that feeling of I wasted 5 perfectly good days of tormenting myself, ripping myself up inside. It was a bad feeling, Vic. I'll tell you, it was a bad feeling, man. It was bad.
Man, I'll tell you, a lot of people do that. I see so many people burdened by stress and worry. You can see it in their physiology. You can see it in the shape of their face. You can see it in the way their shoulders are held and their chin where they're standing. Worry is a poison. It will kill you.
It'll kill you.
It'll kill you.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, look at that. We pulled something out there that's broader than the MTV experience, but that's
it was
huge.
part of
That's
the
huge.
experience. It was part of it.
That's for sure.
It's part of it. Yeah.
So there's so many places I want to go, and we can probably do 20 of these, but I'm going to skip past Think New Ideas for a minute, and maybe
everybody
at a later
does.
date,
It's so
we're
unfair.
Going to come back. No. Hey, listen, I visited you.
I know
Think
you're one
New
of the few
Ideas,
people who know.
right?
Yeah.
You were all suited up in a nice suit.
I weighed
looked very
120
CEO-like.
pounds, or was it 220? Yeah.
But there's a little something that I do want to introduce. You started this thing called podcasting, and some call you the Podfather. Ladies and gentlemen, I met a guy named Adam. And he started in RSS. And he said, what if my people could stream audio music to the internet through many people? And so was born the podcasting. And some call him the Podfather. So how did you get this name? What happened? Tell me all about the podcasting journey. It's fantastic. I love this story.
Listen, Vicky, listen to me now. Let me tell you.
So,
no, it's more like this.
Adam, what are you doing, my man?
I love that we have the same machine.
So I we'll get back to Think New Ideas, but I'd taken the company public with other people.
Yeah.
I jettisoned out just before 2000. My then wife wants to go back to Europe. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but it doesn't matter. That was the plan God had for me at the time. And we go back, and I'm flush with cash, Vic. I mean, and, we had an IPO. It wasn't tremendous amounts, but what the big thing that happened was somewhere in like 98, someone had called me and said, hey, there's this guy, and they're doing a search engine. They're looking for some angel funding, $50,000. I happen to have really $50,000 really laying around. I'm like, yeah, I'll put it in, no problem. I was just like, yeah, whatever, public company. I'm a guy, I'll throw $50,000 your way. I forget about that. So we're back in Amsterdam, and now it's 2000, and the guy calls me from the bank, and he says, are you sitting down? I say, yeah. He says, you remember that $50,000 you put into some company? I say, yeah. He said, that company called Ask Jeeves? Well, that just went public, and that $50,000 is now $65 million. I'm like,
Stop
what?
it.
He said, however, you're locked up. You can't sell it. I'm like, this thing's a dog. This is not going to go anywhere. So they were able to sell $12 million worth. So that was amazing. So I had cash, and I'm like, yeah, I'll help you write your book. Here's $100,000. Go write your book. Whatever. I was just like throwing money around. A helicopter company, bought a castle, all kinds of cool stuff. Turns out having more than one house sucks. It's not worth it. You got to hire people to look after the house, and then people to look after the people. I learned so much about it. I'm so fortunate that I got to learn that money is just, I didn't care. As you know, I already told you, I didn't care. It's like, oh, whatever. Yeah. I got a lot now. It doesn't matter. Hey, we'll go fly the helicopter today and buy the castle. It doesn't matter. And so I'm sitting there at the castle looking out over the land. And it hits me. It hits me that this thing that this guy over here, Dave Weiner, has been doing with RSS, there's something I always wanted to broadcast on the internet. I just didn't know how to do it because the problem with the internet is, unlike radio, where every additional listener you get from your expensive broadcast tower is really a reduction in cost because you can sell more ads. But on the internet, every extra person, certainly at the time, that's an extra stream. That costs money. So this is not a good model. And so I'm looking at this thing, this blogging thing that Dave Weiner has. And then I see this thing called the iPod. And the first thing I go is, that's like the radio that my grandmother gave me. Yeah. That's that little radio. It was white. It wasn't black. It was the same size, about the same. The first iPod had the movable hard.
The Gen 1.
Gen 1, big wheel on it. I'm like, this is a radio receiver. And it clicked. I'm like, I know exactly how to do this. And I went about putting it together. You know, I had some people help me with AppleScript. I'm not a software developer, and I made it work. And wow, here we go. So I started creating. So the idea was that, you know, you could create a radio show, and you could put it out on the internet, and you put it in this RSS feed with an enclosure, and then anyone could subscribe to it. Now, this was a new concept. The concept, because remember, we only had cable modems maybe back then. So
we did. And if I could jump in, I just want to tell the people who are going to listen to us, RSS was used for news feeds.
Right?
Yeah,
it was for news feeds. It was for blogs, really. Yeah, Google Reader was a big thing. People go to Google Reader, and they could read blogs. And it was basically, you could publish your blog, and then that information went off into the blogosphere, and you could use little programs, and Google Reader, I think, was really what made it take off. And you could read these blogs kind of like an inbox. And so I just said, well, what if we just made an attachment to that, like an email with an attachment? So the blog says, here's what this episode's about, and here's the file. And the genius was download the file in the background while the person isn't looking. And then when they go to pick up their iPod in the morning, which back then we had to sync your iPod to your iTunes on your computer.
Yep.
Then everything would be loaded. You could take it with you. You didn't need it because mobile internet didn't exist. We didn't have phones. We didn't have smartphones. We barely had mobile phones. We had, you know, like GSM, little Nokias and stuff. Flip phone, Motorola. TAC, what was it called? The Motorola
Nextel, remember? Oh, the StarTAC.
StarTAC, yeah.
StarTAC.
Remember the Nextel chirp? Yeah, we had all that. So it was like, this is genius. I can make a radio program of any length, whatever I want to say, and people can get it and listen to it whenever they want to. This is fantastic. I don't have to get up at 6 a.m. to do a morning show. So I needed to develop this out, and so I start creating a show called the Daily Source Code, which I did specifically to talk about these software guys who just showed up and said, hey, we like what you've done with this hokey little AppleScript. We can make an application. Remember, we didn't have apps. We had applications. So a computer program for Windows, a computer program for the Mac, and this new operating system called Linux, whatever. So they started making these applications, and I would just talk about what they were doing. We learned all these cool new things. You know, at the time, like if you subscribe to a podcast, it's probably not a good idea to give that person all the back episodes in one go, you know, particularly when people are on dial-up. Yeah, it was a bad idea. We learned all these interesting little things, and it took off because there were two groups of people who showed up. The Godcasters, so religious broadcasters who were like, man, we're buying time on cable stations and satellite. We can do this on the internet. This is great. This iPod stuff you got. And it wasn't even called a podcast. We didn't have a name.
Right.
And Tony Khan, WGBH, NPR. Hi, I'm Tony Khan, WGBH. This is really interesting. Adam, this thing that you've got, this is really nice. So I'm like, Tony, you got to introduce this. So he started putting NPR programming on it. And then it was like the BBC called me, like interviewed me. Now, you know, NPR on the media, they're all interviewing me. All this stuff is happening. Like, wow, this thing's taken off. And we're just doing shows. You know, and at a certain point, it gets called podcasting. And then I get a call from Steve Jobs.
Who's that?
Exactly. Actually, to be fair, it was Eddie Q. By the way, Eddie Q is like top guy at Apple now. And it was his guy. Is Eddie? What a great name. Hey, everybody, it's Eddie Q. Hey, Eddie. Yeah, do you have time to meet with Steve?
Yeah.
Let me check my calendar.
Wait a minute. As we used to say, I'm not sure. I think there might be a daily marathon of Gilligan's Island on. We can't interrupt ourselves there.
So Steve wants to meet me in San Diego at the All Things D conference. And so I fly there. And he meets me, and we meet for an hour, just him and me. And he's really soft and kind and personable. Of course, I got the Steve Jobs wants something from you version, but that's fine. That's the memory I have. I'm happy with that. And he was interested, and he told me something really cool. He said, "You know, we were watching what you're doing." So, what do you mean? Well, weren't you putting your show onto like the Mac drive? And that's how I was publishing my early daily source code. Remember the Mac drive? It would mount on your desktop. You drag it in there, and then I'd have a link to it. He said, you were pushing so much bandwidth that this threw up all kinds of red flags. But they came to me, and I said, let him do it. Just let him go. Let's see what happens. So Steve Jobs
cool.
actually, that's a cool little bit of the story I don't think many people have heard. And he's asking me, stuff about recording. And he says, Adam, I want to build radios for you. And this hit me. It said, you get it. Because that's what the iPod was. It was a radio. Yeah. And he said, I'm going to build the dial for you. I'm going to make it searchable. I actually gave him something called iPodder.org. We had 4,000 or 5,000 podcasts, which was crowdsourced from around the world. People were contributing to the directory, and I gave that to them. And then the next day, he announced podcasting right there on stage because he already had it all good to go. He didn't need me, but he actually just wanted my blessing. Yeah. Which of course, because he's like, is that okay? I'm like, yeah, I think that's fine, Steve. You go do that. And from there, just of course, blew up.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. So when you leave Cupertino, what are you thinking on the way back?
Well, the first thing I did is I sent him an email to thank him. sjobs@apple.com.
Okay.
And he sent me an email back, and he says, thank you for helping do this. I'm going to connect you with my friends at Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital because I think your idea of a network is good. Which he did. And I went off then and raised $65 million from Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, a couple others, and built a network, which was great because I learned that you can't make money with a podcast network. So we raised it. But it was another great experience to go through that because I'd taken a company public. I'd never taken venture capital money.
Sure.
And these are some top-notch people. It was interesting to meet Ray Lane, who had been number 2 at Oracle and was running a lot of the venture fund, and meet Mike Moritz and take their money. So
when Steve makes the introduction, you're getting money.
Oh, you're good. You're good. The raise is pretty much there. And that's the last I ever heard from him, of course. But
so that's the beginning. Let's fast forward a little bit and tell me about No Agenda. When you started that, how it's going, what's happening, and tell people who might not know, which I'd find that hard to believe. But tell me about No Agenda.
So I started a podcast network company called Pod Show. We changed that later to Mevio. And we were doing what no one could do, including Spotify with $1 million, because you can't monetize the network. I've learned. We're like, we'll have all this, it was basically, if you look at it in a simple way, it was a record label with, instead of bands, podcasters. Mm-hmm. Same basic setup, give them a, recoupment, give them a development fee, the whole thing. But once, when you don't really control the distribution, because anybody can go off and use the internet to distribute it somewhere else or by themselves, you really don't have any leverage. So I did, at the time, Leo Laporte had started the This Week in Tech, and he had the Twit network, and he was built. But This Week in Tech has really always been the flagship show, and a real nerdy show. But he had this guy on, John C. Dvorak, who was very famous in, and we'd actually met a long time ago, but that's a different story, not that relevant. Very famous in Silicon Valley, back to the DOS days. He had a publishing company, wrote books, about different DOS aspects. He did radio shows, did television, all around technology. But most famously, he wrote the back page column of PC Magazine, which people would run out to get that just to read his snark. Because that's, nice. He would always troll and snark but with knowledge. So it was always fun. And we're both on the show together. It's only audio at that point. It's via remote. So I'm dialing in. I don't know if he was in the studio or not. And we're done, and we're talking afterwards. It's like, Curry, what's your deal? What do you mean? People don't like you. Are you rich? What's going on with you? I said, I'll be in San Francisco next week. Why don't we go out to lunch? Go out to lunch. I love the guy. You know, he's funny. He's got a dry humor. We're connecting. So I hire him to do a daily tech show on MeVia, a pod show at the time. And now I was going back and forth between London and San Francisco because I'd never wanted to. I'd moved to London at that time. I never wanted to live in San Francisco, but the VC, of course, forced us to have headquarters in San Francisco. Big mistake. Never should have let that happen. And so I'm going back and forth. I'll be out in San Francisco for 2 weeks, fly back. It was a horrible, horrible time. But then I'd be out there. We go out to restaurants. He does judges wine at wine competitions. So we'd always, we'd use the corporate credit card, get some crazy bottle of wine, drink it, and then we left. And I go back to London, and Skype was the big thing then. So we get on Skype once a week and we talk about what's going on. So what's happened in San Francisco? I say, well, what's going on here in UK? Look, I got the Financial Times, and we saw that there was a very different way that worldly events were being reported between the two continents. In addition to that, the European Union was now being finalized, and they're about to bring in the euro, and they had the Lisbon Treaty, and Ireland voted no, and then everyone went to Ireland and went, you idiots, you voted wrong, do over, and they voted again and voted yes. It was hilarious. It was like, what's going on? And then I read this document because we have the internet. I'm like, this thing is not just about no borders and no passports and the euro. There's a lot more going on here. So we were discussing that. And we keep talking about this once a week or something like that. And I think John said, we should record this. We should turn it into a podcast. I'm like, yeah, that's good. We'll call it No Agenda. We'll have no jingles, no agenda, no commercials. And of course, now it's 3.5 hours filled with jingles, still no commercials.
And it's twice a week.
And it's twice. Yeah, I think we might have done 3 times a week at one point, but that was too much. And it's 16 years now, and it's still, I still do it with great pleasure. It's like I'll be up tomorrow early prepping. We'll do the show. I love it. We probably have an audience of 900,000 to 1 million people now. They support the show monetarily, time, talent, treasure. So we pioneered the value for value model. We've never had an ad, and it's kept 2 families clothed and a roof over our heads for all this time. And we're on episode 1,642, I think, tomorrow 43.
It's crazy. So, yeah, that's been some run. It's great, and I know people enjoy it. I've never had a gig that's lasted this long. Dvorak and I never talk except on the show. That's part of the deal. We just don't talk. We have nothing to say to each other. So it's all real on the show. It's fresh. It's real. We go. He brings clips. I bring clips. He has stories. I have stories. We connect. He's a boomer. He's from he's older than I am. So different generation, which brings an interesting perspective to things. What year were you born?
64.
We're boomers, right?
No, September 64 is I was the voice of a Generation X, Vic. I was the face of Generation X.
They call me Boomer now. I got young guys going, "Hey, Boomer," and and I had to look it up. I'm like, and March of 64. I say, it's a fucking boomer. Okay,
no, I'm telling you, I was the voice and face of Generation X. I will not accept the boomer label. No,
I try not. Listen, I know I don't look boomer, right? But sometimes I guess I act boomer. Hey, let's do this because that's great. I want to spend 5 minutes on Podcasting 2.0 because what you're doing with this platform, the index, value for value, and where you've taken it into live concerts and shows and things, I don't think 5 minutes can. We may have to come back. Do you
have a time limit on this show of yours?
I really don't. I like to keep it an hour, but let's keep going.
Dude,
no time
This
limit.
is the best interview I've ever done. This is stuff people have never heard before. And I love the idea of you doing a podcast, just interview your friends. No one is that smart. It's great. Just interview your friends. It's great. It's
I got 52 people. It's amazing. 52 people even like me. And now
I never drink anywhere on the podcast except on this one.
Well, here's the funniest thing. So I send out a little, hey, I'm doing this. And I did the first one with the guy who's become a brother, but he got me started in technology.
It was
I'm like,
a fun
of course,
story.
I gotta start with him. He's great. But and he's a brother. He's a great friend. Well, now the list, everybody's butthurt about where they are on the list.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, Adam's next. One, he's equipment ready. He's lighting ready. He knows what he's doing. Number two, it's like I've known him 35 years, and I wouldn't be podcasting or making shows if it weren't for him. So he's the next guy. But you're right. I don't have a time limit. Let's keep doing it. This is great. Tell me about 2.0.
So about 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, a couple of things happened. Actually, right before COVID, Joe Rogan calls me. He said, "Come on my show," and I'm like, "Wow, Joe Rogan! This is a big. We're doing no agenda. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I haven't really looked at any development of podcasting. It's all kind of been the same for all these years." So Joe says, "Come on my show." So I go out to LA. This is first week of March, so literally a week before lockdowns and all this crazy stuff. And Joe Rogan recertifies me. "You're the Podfather."
Nice.
Because who knows me? No one knows MTV. No one knows MTV anymore. At that point, 16 years since podcasting was invented, or even longer, like no one knows me. He totally recertifies me. Wow, this is amazing. So I have a great chat with Joe. I fly back. Now COVID starts to happen. And there's a lot that went on in that period. But one thing is, because of how Apple introduced podcasting, they kind of became the de facto on-ramp to have a podcast. If you're not on Apple, you don't exist anywhere, because even the small independent app developers, they were all using the Apple index of 4 or 5 million podcasts to get their information. And this is a little technical, but back when we were starting, you could have, the people think it's like, oh, I just go to my podcast app, I search for something, I subscribe. That's not how it was. Right. You had to, you'd hear about it, hear about a podcast. You had to go to the website, find the RSS icon, right click on it, copy link, go to your podcast application, paste it in, and then you were subscribed. Now, Apple brought one click to that, but still only online, not even on apps. And there were lots of people building independent podcast apps, but again, they all use that Apple database, which is unsupported by Apple. You don't pay to be as a developer, so that means they can stop and kick you off, whatever. But they've been doing it for more than 10 years. They've been good stewards of podcasting until they start to deplatform people. So this is why COVID was important, because anyone who was saying anything about hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, boom, your podcast was gone. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. And they had this one famous moment where Silicon Valley kicked off like 5 or 6 podcasts, and Facebook took them down, and Twitter took them down, and Apple threw them off. I'm like, what's going on? This is not okay. So there's this guy in Alabama, Dave Jones, and I've been friends with Dave at this point for 11, 12 years, and really just online. We kind of met years ago doing similar stuff, and every 6 months or a year, I'd call Dave and say, "Dave, I got a great idea. This is the product. This is it, man. This is going to make us legendary." And we'd build it, and we'd use it, and 5 other people would use it. And then I called him and said, "Dave, we've got to start our own index, and we've got to make it available for software developers everywhere, because Apple is is now in charge of podcasting. That can't be." And Dave, of course, goes, "Okay, let's do it." And so we spend 3 months. We set up all these little miniature servers to suck out Apple's entire database. We didn't want to get on their radar, because we're basically scraping it. So we'd have this one pop up from a different IP address. We're like, bloop, bloop, bloop. So we're sucking it in. And we were watching for 3 months. We see, okay, hey, we have everything now. All right. In the meantime, we've developed this, a little website, and we say, hey, software developers, if you want a drop-in replacement for Apple, we're here. And we're doing it's free. You can use it as much as you want. We're doing it the same way, do the No Agenda podcast, value for value. So if you want to support us, you send us some money. Whatever it's worth to you, we don't care. And they show up. They're like, wow, this is great. We love this. Now, I had a secondary mission. The other part of this is financial deplatforming, because getting kicked off of some payment processor was happening throughout COVID as well. All this, like, wow, people are, and then we had the trucker protest. We all saw that, whoa, man, this is not cool. So the Lightning Network, which is a side chain network of Bitcoin, had just started to kind of gain traction. And this means that you can do something that was one of the big promises of the internet. They promised that your refrigerator will know when you run out of milk. It'll automatically order it for you. Vic, I don't know. I'm still waiting for that one. Where's that magic? The other one was micropayments. Micropayments will be possible. And this actually makes micropayments possible. You can send, 1/10 of a penny to someone with almost no fees from point to point on this Lightning Network. Now, it comes in the form of Satoshis, which is a little piece of Bitcoin.
Yep.
But just think of it as a fairground token. Doesn't matter that much. So my idea of value for value, which we've done now at this point for 13, 14 years with no agenda, is you just ask someone, you say, here's the show, whatever you think it's worth, send that to me. Just put it into an amount and send it. Now, when we did this in the beginning of No Agenda, we were expecting people to send $5. Yeah, a lot of people sent $5. A lot of people more people sent 50. Some sent 500, and one guy sent $5,000. I'm like, oh, I get it. I can't determine what something is worth to somebody else.
That's right.
And to let Silicon Valley determine that your music track is worth 99 cents, please, that's insulting. Yeah. I mean, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, $99 every single time. Not a problem. Best love song ever written in my book. So I had learned this, that if you ask people to send whatever they think it's worth, they will. So now I could complete this value for value in these new apps. The minute, so the app becomes a wallet. You put money in there, and you can say, I want to pay Vic $1 an hour that I'm listening to his podcast. Yeah, it's reasonably fair. I might pay more now because I really think Vic's show is good. I might pay him $100. Doesn't matter. The minute you hit play, that podcast app is now going to send 1/60th of that amount that I predetermined to Vic, direct, point to point, when I'm listening. The minute I stop, it stops. So you're now, value is just value of something, right? The dollar, I can show you $1 and you tell me that's worth $1. It's a piece of paper, but I can show you $100, you say $100, still a piece of paper. Ones and zeros that come into my ears as an MP3, it's ones and zeros, but it's valuable to me because I'm hearing this MP3 and I like the program. So I'm just sending back ones and zeros in the form of some other value called Satoshis, and this is now an ongoing exchange. So that's kind of the dream. We have there's no friction. You load up your app, you send stuff when you want to. You can hit a boost, which means you can send an extra amount, like an attaboy, if you want to, with a little message, a boostagram. And then we added something which I think is really the genius. We added this concept of splits. So,
this is the genius, by the way.
Yeah.
This is the absolute genius.
So if you are a listener and you're listening to a podcast and you're sending value to that podcaster, this payment is now being split into multiple parts as determined by the podcaster. So first of all, the app you're using for free, which never got any piece of the ad money or Joe Rogan money, and you've never paid the guy anything for doing that app, he now can take a 1%. You as the podcaster can decide, I'm doing the show like right now. Adam's on the show. He's a big name. I'm going to give him 20 points on this podcast. Now, of course, you didn't because you're not like that anymore, Vic. You used to be. But
not monetizing.
You're not monetized. So you could say, I'll give my guest 20 points. I'll take 50. I'll give my mom 10 because she loaned me the money for the gear. You can split up as many times as you want. And those literally will be split up by the app into all these different direct payments. So there's no one in the middle. There's no middleman, no clearinghouse. It's direct from the listener to those recipients as determined by the podcaster. So now we have an ecosystem, because I can also, as a podcaster, I can say, I want to give 5% to the guy who promotes the podcast, 5% to the guy who gets clips for me or does some production. So now we have something kind of interesting. It's like a royalty structure that is and the contract is out in the open. Everybody can look at the split, and so there's no funny business going on. This takes off. People start to like it. Of course, it takes off with Bitcoin coming back into play. Yep. In the meantime, all these software developers come in and go, this is great. We have 20 other features we've been looking to do, but we've never been able to do it because basically if Apple didn't implement it, it would never happen. So we did the true, if they build it, they will come, and they did. And now we have like 70 apps and services using it. There's, I think if you look at the ecosystem, there's probably $25,000 a month flying through the system, all in Bitcoin. And now we just added something, which is music. So the music business, as you know, has gotten so bad that, you're basically, first you got to find a distributor, and then you pay the distributor, and there's DistroKid or name these other ones, and they'll put it on all these platforms, and they put it up on Spotify and Apple and Amazon. And basically you do all that, you pay money, you pay some guy to put you on a playlist, you get 5,000 streams, and you get no money. Yeah. That's basically the music business today. And then if you do get 10,000 streams, they'll say, well, you got some money, but we won't pay you until you get $100. And all the rest of the money is going to Taylor Swift. I mean, who knows what's going on? Radio is even ASCAP BMI. I mean, it used to be really great. I don't think it's that great anymore. You would know better than I. But, your song gets played somewhere 48 months later, a penny drops out of the bucket. Like, well, I don't know, where'd that even come from? So there's all these artists who've have no deals. They do their own publishing. They be ASCAP BMI, but they're not on the radio. Mm-hmm. And so there's no difference really between a podcast that is 3 hours long and a podcast, which is still an MP3 file that's 3 minutes long. It's just called a song. So you can put that song out there now, the same system. We've allowed it to be in the index in the same fashion, just marked as music. And now not only can people pay while they're listening to your song or send you a boost or send you, whatever they want to, now podcasters can put that song into their podcast. And the minute I hit play in my podcast, the whole wallet switches. And all the money that people are sending to me because they're listening to my podcast goes to the artist, not just to the artist, but the artist can now split that however they want. Writer, composer, producer, bass
engineer.
We'll even get that. We'll give the engineer. I mean, even the bass player. Okay, everyone's going to get something now, and it's working. Now, it could take years. I don't know how long it will take, but there's tens of thousands of tracks up now, and we're seeing artists who have made in 5 years $500 on all the streaming platforms make $11,000 through this system. And you have to, and this is the magic of it. You don't need to be number one. The whole idea of I had to be number one, had the most listeners to get all the advertising money. No, you need 1,000 people who support what you do.
Yeah, it's value.
And if they'll send you $1 a month, you're starting to get something real. If they send you 2, you can live. And the same with music. And we're just going to do this with everything. This is the distribution mechanism and monetization model of the future, I think.
People will always give more for the value they find or the cause they want to get behind than you'll ask them for. All the time. When you set a price and a value like you set up front, Silicon Valley tries to tell you what something's worth. I recall a story. I have a friend. He'll be on a podcast. His nickname is Coach Tony, but he's been a friend for 40 years.
I've met Tony.
You met Tony, yeah. So Tony, aside from being a coach, he's a coach in business and for business professionals and executives. He has
another
a music
podcast
school.
You didn't start.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm here now, right? But he has a music school. It's been his passion. He's a musician. He played with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister for 10 years. And so he becomes a friend of a German maestro, a classical guitar player. And I forget Hubert's last name. I'll look it up. But Hubert is like, he's practically Segovia, but in Europe, he's massive.
Right.
Tony goes to a seminar of his in Connecticut, meets him, becomes friends, and then subsequently goes to Germany every year for a month to study with Hubert. But Hubert calls him and says, hey, I'm coming to the States, and I want to come to your music academy, and I want to put on a show.
Wow.
He's got all these other paid shows, but he likes Tony as a friend, and he just wants to do it. And he said, well, how much would that cost? And Hubert said, it's going to cost you nothing. I'm already in New York. So Tony scrambles because he's got 2 days to figure this out, try to figure out where to put it, wants a place, and he's figuring out how much to charge. And in the 11th hour, he says, we're going to the church down the street because the room can hold about 250 people. It's free. And I'm going to put a bucket at the front door and say donations only. Because he's thinking, what am I going to do? Charge $20 a head?
Right.
So people are dropping money on the way in. Here's the thing. When it's done, now the value is determined. They're dropping twice as much money in the bucket on the way out. He gives he bundles up all the money. He gives the church $500. They're ecstatic, saying thank you for an hour and 40 minutes he was there. They count up the cash. I forget the exact amount, but Hubert tells him it's more money than he was paid at any engagement in the States he had played for the last 2 weeks. By far.
My beautiful and talented wife, Tina. Have you known all three of my wives, Vic? I don't think you ever met number two.
I've known two of them.
You didn't miss. There's nothing.
I know. I met the first, and now I know the last, as I've been informed.
The last. Thank you. You better believe it. The last and the best.
Mm-hmm.
She is retired from corporate life, but she was a communications director, C-suite, chief communications officer. Last job she had was Ronald McDonald House Charities for Central Texas. And that's how we met. I was doing a charity event for them. And she says to me, and this was really important in the whole scheme of things, she says, Adam, do you know the number one reason why people don't give to charities? And I'm like, I have all these wild ideas. I said, yeah. She says, because they weren't asked. Yeah. Because they just weren't asked. People think that, it's like magic. You got to ask them. And that's the hardest part, is to say, hey, would you please, support this? I don't care how you support it. Just support it, whatever it's worth to you. And people will do it. It's amazing how well that works. And so the whole value for value thing, on one hand, it's Ayn Randian. On the other hand, it's biblical. There's so much in it, but it really works. And it's very fair. Because if the people who are consuming my product don't like it, they won't give me anything, and that they'll signal to me if it's no good. Yeah, it's that simple. So it is the purest form. But it's a difficult one for most people because But when you're talking about almost an intangible product, it's just ones and zeros coming to your computer rendered as something. It's a throwaway product. You can't build a house with it. You can't jump over it. It's just a thing. It's information. So what is that worth to you? For some people, it's worth a lot. For some people, it'll never be worth anything. And I'm like, well, why are you listening then? That seems weird, but okay, it's fine.
Well, think about it. I think these things, and I'm a big YouTube listener, podcast listener. When I talk about value from those things, I'm a lifelong learner. I love information. And through these things, I can get my emotions riled or settled. I can get my brain filled with information and sources of things. And you know me, I'm a pretty extreme guy. I've been carnivore for 270 days, only eating meat. And, people look at me like I have 17 heads, but I'm better and stronger than I've been.
Never look better in your life, brother. You look great.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I feel great. And, but I didn't jump into that. It came from information. So the value that I find in these digital streams, I have access to more information and guidance of emotion and feeling and thought through these platforms than ever in humankind. It's just ever possible. Now, the scary thing is, and this is something that I debate with people because you'll say, oh, look, the sky is blue. Here's a video. And then they'll send you the next video. You're completely wrong. The sky is purple. Look at my video. The next guy goes, no. Look at my video. The sky is gray. And now we
Smash
have the
that like button.
Yeah, and smash that like button. But now we have all these, these very different opinions. So while the information is vast, you got to be careful because, you've got to validate. And it's hard. And I personally have become very distrusting of the traditional media sources because as I get older, I start figuring out things and about how that message has been manipulated for decades and decades and decades, and money
all our
and
life,
power.
Vic. All our life. It's just become clear now for us.
It's very clear, and it's out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
It's out in the open. It's a bit disheartening. Somebody said to me recently, "Oh, you don't trust science?" I said, "I do trust science. I just don't trust the messenger delivering the science."
Yeah, but also science by definition is meant to change when there's a new thesis that comes. You're not drinking, by the way. I'm a little disappointed.
I'm done with my triple. It's now down to water. I had a triple tequila. Triple, by the way.
I repoured. I'm doing
when
good
I
here.
poured the tequila, let me see if I can do that.
There?
The tequila was up to here.
Good.
So, and the bottle was, I kept pouring. I kept looking at the bottle. I'm like, oh, that's almost done. Let me just kind of fill that up.
So, Vic, I love how here we are 35 years later.
Crazy.
We definitely didn't have contact for a long time. We reconnected, man, what I'm going to say, about 9 years ago?
Yeah, I was going to say 9 to 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago. And
when did you move to Austin?
I moved to Austin in 2010. And this is kind of a story because I was living in LA. I figured I'd try LA for a year. I've been in San Francisco, tried LA. Well, it's not for me. And I did a tour of called the Hot Pockets tour. I was driving around in an RV, doing meetups, meeting all of the people who listen to the show, doing the show from the road. I'd just been down the Gulf Coast, and it was the BP spill had happened, so people were depressed, and it was a bad vibe. And I'm like, I'm going to go up north, Indiana, Chicago. And Greg Lawley, do you ever deal with Greg Lawley?
No.
One of the last independent indie record promoters in the world. He used to be in San Francisco. He has, 5 Midwest stations, 5 or 6, and he had moved to Austin. And he kept emailing me, Adam, you're on your way up. Come to Austin. I'm like, it's Texas, Greg. It's like, I don't know, whatever. And he was very persistent. And I'm thinking, Greg is a really flamboyantly gay guy with an adopted kid. He's by himself. He's living. Austin must be okay because they haven't killed him. Because that was, all the prejudice. Like, no, they kill gays in Texas. We can't have that. So I go visit Greg, and I do a meetup in Austin, 2010, and it's 112 degrees, but it's a dry heat, and everyone's really happy. And there's 33 people there. Couldn't be better with the magic number.
Oh, a little bell.
And everyone's happy, and they're proud of their town or their city, and everything's great. And this one young woman stands up, her purse falls on the ground, and out rolls a handgun and a fresh pair of panties. I'm like, Austin, that's the place for me. I moved there 6 weeks later. 6 weeks later, I'm like, Austin.
This
is
2010.
Like, what's that?
This is 2010.
2010, yeah.
Was that apartment that I visited you in the first place you lived?
No, that was the third or fourth. Yeah.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let's back up.
No, I moved here with my second wife.
You did. When did you get divorced? From number 2.
Around the time that you came to that apartment.
Yeah.
Because I bolted out and I went to that apartment downtown, which was did I have the stripper pole then?
Maybe. You
might stripper pole in the apartment.
you might have had that. I don't recall, but I do remember the ham radio antenna on the balcony.
Oh yeah. I had the ham radio rigging up and everything. Yeah, that was a real dude apartment.
Yeah, total dude. Apartment.
But it was cool. It was sexy. It was a sexy apartment.
Concrete floors, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah, we call it the gulag. It was a total prison.
That was great.
It was a great apartment, and then that's the one when I met Tina. I think I might have been with Tina when you came by that one time. I'm not sure. She wasn't living with me.
Second trip, I met Tina. So I came up with Tony. We saw you at that apartment.
Right.
Next trip, I was in Austin with my son. I drove down to buy a guitar. And I'm like, oh, let's have dinner with Adam. Let's call him. And so you're like,
wait a
buddy,
minute. Now, but how did we reconnect then? Because I knew, you were in Dallas, and how did you? Because the first time we had reconnected was when you came with Tony, right? You came.
Yeah, I think somehow I just heard you were
maybe.
No, I just heard you were in Austin somehow. Maybe it was the Facebook or something like that.
You reached out to me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I reached out, and you're like, yeah, I'm in Austin.
Yeah,
come by.
Yeah. We went out, and we went to that. What was that crazy place? It was a cool place on like 2nd Street or something. It was a great restaurant.
It had the short rib.
Yeah,
that was the second time.
It sure did.
With like the duck reduction or whatever the heck that was on the mashed potatoes.
It was good.
Man.
Yeah, and
what
then
a bar that place had too.
And then of course, your daughter got married, and you invited us.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, man, let's go. This is great. We'll go up to Vicky's wedding, to his kid's wedding.
What a great wedding that was.
That was a fantastic wedding. And it was actually part of my faith journey because we went to the Catholic church and it was a dynamite church. And, Tina and I were just she was raised Catholic. So all of a sudden she's doing the callbacks. I'm like, what? You know this stuff, girl? What's going on with that? and it was important.
She knew the script.
Yeah. But it was another important step. It was just, there was something really good about it. And it was just being around you and I didn't know a lot of people there, but there was a good vibe. You had some good Jersey people there.
You had people from all over there, and I made sure that I sat you with good friends.
Oh, we had a dynamite table, no doubt about it.
Great table.
Yeah, we had a great table, and you went all out. What was that, like a 15-piece band you had on stage?
It was 11. Let's not get carried away.
Those guys rocked. It was like, oh yeah, this is a music guy who hired this band, and they were great. I even did my show the next morning from the hotel there. So I went up to like 12:30 or 1, and I got up early and did my show from the hotel room. And since then, you've been down here with Chris. We've been up there, and I'm coming up for your birthday, brother, for your big one. I'm coming up for your birthday, yeah,
the big one. One thing that happened at the wedding that I don't know if you remember was great. So I give the father of the bride speech.
I cried
early on.
I cried.
I felt like I crushed it. Right. I was like, first of all,
that day,
speeches
ever.
Dude, I was on a high that day. I had prepared just a couple of bullet point notes, and it just went. And, I pulled in Uncle Chicky into the...
Uncle Chicky was awesome.
It was great.
I mean, they call me the Podfather. This was the Godfather at this wedding, okay? Uncle Chicky is no joke. You put Uncle a cap Chicky's in your knee, no problem.
And then, so when it was all done, I'm stuffing the paper back in my pocket. And I don't think it was 6 seconds since I was done. And you come running up to me and you put both hands, one on each shoulder, and you're like, dude, no one here can appreciate but me how great that was. Like, I'm the guy who does this. Yeah. That was awesome. That was great. It meant a lot. Good. But I was like, yeah, all right. I just got an A+. This is great.
No, it was dynamite. It capped it all off. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
The one thing that I like most about our relationship, and this is
the sex.
Well, I wasn't going to say that on the podcast, but now that you mention it, no, it's the history. Yeah. It's the history that we have discovered ourselves through various histories and our friendship. And then, with my wife and now your wife, and you see those two run off. And
oh my God, they're made from the same. They're made from the same dirt, brother. They're made from the same
unreal
stuff. Yeah,
it's great. And so when that happens, and my wife and I often talk about it's very difficult, especially as you get older, to find people where you like the husband and the wife.
Agreed.
And so the people we spend time with all the time are the places where we love the husband and the wife.
Yeah. Right on.
And so for those who are listening, who we don't spend a lot of time with, I apologize in advance. But, now you know. No, but we're very, very blessed. And, the last topic I had down here was really, I
just need to say something. The last time we came up to visit you guys, and you have a dynamite house. It's beautiful. And we love Chris. We love your kids. Your kids are awesome. They're all awesome. Your extended kids. as I call them, and they're so nice and they're so interesting, and they like to talk with old fogies. They're just cool kids. But we're up with you guys, and I think you're out there on the grill. I'm with you. We're drinking and we're making beef at 11 o'clock at night, and we're eating late, and then it's like 1:30, and Chris goes, "Anybody want dessert?" She's making fresh whipped cream and strawberries. And we're like, wow, look at this. As a 60-year-old man, it's like, look at what I get to witness here. It was just beautiful. It was just beautiful.
Chris is like the Energizer Bunny. Chris has an unlimited amount of energy.
I haven't prepared much for this meal. Yeah. Oh, okay, Chris.
Yeah. Hey, I'm so sorry. It's going to be terrible. Everything's horrible. I just had to whip this up in the last 10 seconds. It's Michelin -1 because it's late.
Amazing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
no.
We had a late meal. I'm starting to eat a little bit later, and it's influenced by my daughter who lives in Mexico City. So, listen, if it were me, I'd eat at 5:30. I'd be in bed by 8 o'clock.
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
I like to get up early.
AARP, man, the discounts are real.
Yeah, exactly. But now, we push it out. We'll make an 8 o'clock, an 8:30 dinner recipe. Right. Yeah, hey, what do you know about that?
Live it up. Yeah, live it up.
So, by the way, for the birthday party, I just hired a cigar roller today.
Brother, I can't smoke them.
I know you can't. But here's the funny thing. Mia, my youngest daughter, says, I don't understand. Why did you hire a cigar roller? You would never smoke a cigar.
Oh, yeah, you will.
No. I will never smoke a cigar. But I said, I like making people happy. And it's going to make the party great.
That is true, Vic. You do. Yeah. You do. We're excited. We're flying up. We're flying up in the little plane, the one that I make Tina climb in over the wing, which she hates, but it's got cup holders and Sirius XM, so I tell her, be quiet. It's great.
Yeah. It's
I'll be flying.
So what I was saying is what I love really about this entire podcast and really and specifically having you on is as I go down the list of people I'm talking to, these are decades-long relationships.
Yeah.
These are decades of friendships. And it's funny, the ones that you really connect on, you can go 10 years and not talk.
Exactly right.
And then all of a sudden you come back and you wait to see, there are 70 people coming to this party in April.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there'll be a little elbow room.
Yeah.
Some of these people I haven't seen in a very long time. Some people I saw last week or last month. It's going to feel like everybody lives in the house.
Yeah.
And there are going to be some amazing people, just incredible diversity in people and personality. And that's what I love. That's why I decided to spin this thing up, because I know some interesting people.
You do.
That have done some interesting stuff. And it's just fun to talk about.
It's the genius of your podcast. Just interview your friends. You can go on for quite a long time.
Yeah. I got at least a year in the bag.
Yeah.
I got a year and I'll have to make new friends after that.
Well, there's a downside to being a podcaster. It's lonely at the top.
Well, I think this journey is, I have no idea where it's going. It's Saturday night. It's what now? 8:20 p.m. here in the great state of Tejas. And we're sipping tequila. I'm onto my water now. I had an unbelievable hour and 27 minutes with you tonight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and doing this. I know people are going to be really interested in listening to, the things they didn't know about you.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I invited myself. I literally said, dude, okay, great podcast. I'm ready for you. You want to just tell everybody the theory behind the title of the podcast, the 10,000 miles? Yeah,
I would love to do it. 10,000 miles is just the journey you have to go on to become good at something. You've heard of, people saying that there's, the book Outlier says you need 10,000 hours, right? To become really proficient in something. So I was thinking about Outliers and I was thinking about it. I'm like, it's not only 10,000 hours, but you got to put a lot of steps in, your journey's long. And I think that people's 10,000 miles that they put under their belt and cars and planes and foot and all these things, it's a journey. It's just to represent a long journey, and life brings you around. The fact that you started with, I don't worry anymore. That's 10,000 miles. Right?
Yeah, right.
That's something you can only learn through that journey and that trip. So I want to hear about people's 10,000 miles. I want to know their story, because for folks coming up behind us, Adam, this is the grit. This is the stuff. This is the belief in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This is the never give up. This is the holy shit. It wasn't easy. I didn't do this once and give up and go crawl into a corner. I didn't expect anybody to give anything to me. I had success. I failed. I had money. I lost it. I got money back, and I'm still alive, and I'm still eating, and life is great. I'll keep figuring it out. That's what I want to bring to people.
And for those coming up behind us, always don't be bashful about reaching out. I think I know you, I know myself. We're always here. Someone reaches out. Yeah, I'll help you. I'll give you some insight. I'll give you my thoughts. That's the best thing you can do. And we've both had people along the way who pulled us up and who helped us out when we needed it, and who were examples and role models.
Yeah. And when you get there, you have an absolute responsibility to put that hand behind you.
Absolutely.
And pull someone up else behind you. Because if you don't do that, it's not worth the journey.
That's right.
My man, say hi to Tina for me.
I will.
All right.
You say hi to your beautiful wife, Chris.
Will do.
Victor, my brother, I love you. God loves you.
Love you, man.
And,
thank you.
And you. And let's...
I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, see you in a few weeks for the party.
All right.
All right, brother.
Have a good time. See you, buddy. Peace.